Welcome to the Brain Picker Pro Show, live from Lake Wiley, South Carolina, and not too far from me, actually, all the way down in, I believe it's Morehead City, North Carolina, is my good friend, longtime friend. We see each other out on the road all the time. We're in a mastermind together, and this guy's a mover and a shaker. He's the private money guy. Just to let you know, he's rehabbed over 300 houses. Right? He's been doing this for 14 years, and he's been involved in over $52 million in transactions, and he knows what he's doing. He's a mover and a shaker, and I call him the private money guy. You want to learn how to raise private money, how to do deals with private money? This is the guy right here, and you're getting ready to learn for the next 30 minutes or so he's going to share all kind of cool stuff with you. Jay, welcome to Brain Picker Pro.
Thank you so much, Larry. Before we went live here on the show, we were just talking. We're getting to see each other in another couple of weeks at the mastermind we're at. But wow, man, I tell you what, your show is so popular. I think we've been trying to coordinate schedules for about 6 months to get on here together. But thank you so much for inviting me and getting it coordinated.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you being on. It's going to be a lot of fun. Why don't you start out and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I grew up here in eastern North Carolina and went off to school and moved out to Texas in my early 20s. That's where I met my wife, Carol Joy, and met her at church. You know, Mama said it's better to meet him at church than a bar, right? So anyway, in fact, Carol Joy and I are celebrating next month our 32-year anniversary. And so anyway, a little bit about the personal side, but I grew up, Larry, in the mobile home business. My dad, Wallace Connor, and you may remember back some years ago, Connor Homes.
Right.
Connor Mobile Homes. So I grew up in the housing business, helping people get affordable housing. And the retail financing on that industry went away by and large about 15 years ago.
Right.
And I knew if I ever got out of the manufactured housing mobile home business, I wanted to get into single family housing. And so that's when we started 15 years ago. We were shutting down the mobile home company. And it's a whole lot more fun to start up a company than it is to shut down a company. So my first year while we were shutting down the company, I did 3 flips. Not really knowing what I was doing.
Right.
I wasn't smart enough at the time to get my education that I should have gotten when I started. But we did 3 houses, our first year. And so we've been full-time now 14 years in the business.
Wow, that's great. That's great, man. You rehabbed over 300 houses. Better you than me, man.
Well, thank goodness it's not like me. I don't even know how to swing a hammer, but I know how to find the people that know how to do it. But I know what you mean. That reminds me of a student of mine some years ago said, "Oh, Jay, I just love rehabbing my own houses. It's like therapy to me." And I said, "Man, anybody that rehabs their own houses needs therapy." But anyway, when I started out, when it came to funding my deals, Larry,
right,
all I knew to do was go to the local bank, go to the mortgage company, whatever. I didn't know anything about subject to. I didn't know anything about lease option. I didn't know anything about seller financing, all these other ways, that you teach, on how to control properties, wholesaling and all that. And so the first 6 years I was in the business, I used traditional funding.
Right.
And, back then, Larry, my lands, if you could fog a mirror, you could walk into the bank and get an unsecured line of credit. And that's what I did.
Right.
I got a $250,000 unsecured line of credit because I had, good proof of income and I had good credit score. And so I used that line of credit. Well, man, I tell you what, I remember like it was yesterday, but it was such a huge blessing in disguise. 9 years ago now, I called up my banker and I had 2 deals under contract and told him where they were. I had this conversation, I don't know how many times with Steve, was my banker. Operative word was. And so I tell him what I'm doing, and he goes silent on me, which is never a good sign, right?
No, no.
And so in that conversation 9 years ago, I learned that I've been cut off with no
Wow.
notice. And this is 2008, 2009.
Right, right.
So I called up my buddy Jeff in Greensboro,
Uh-huh.
North Carolina. I told him what had happened. He says, "Welcome to the club. They just cut me off too." And I said, "Well, what are you doing and what are we going to do?" And then Jeff told me about private money. I'd never heard about private money, using private money. And I'm not talking hard money. I'm not talking hard money.
Right, right.
True private money. And so when Jeff told me about that, man, I put it on steroids. I put a system together, and in less than 90 days, I raised $2,150,000 in private money. So my banker and the economy did me a huge favor by cutting off that source of funds.
Right.
And it forced me to find another way. And if I hadn't been cut off from the banks, I wouldn't be on your show today, Larry.
Wow.
Because I wouldn't have been led to this private money thing.
That is awesome, man. That is awesome. Now, a lot of people talk about private money, and a lot of people, talk about their needing private money, but nobody really knows what to do or how to do it. But you know what? The thing I have learned over the years, and I'll tell you, I'm just being upfront with you. I don't use private money. I've talked about using it. I have people offering to loan me private money just because of the position we're in, right, Jay?
Sure.
But there's a lot of people out there think, oh man, this is really some kind of really hard thing to do, or who has money? Nobody has money. But once you really get into it and learn what to do and how to do it, it's not really that complicated, is it?
No, not at all. So just so all of your viewers and listeners are understanding what we're talking about, when we say private money, we're not talking about doing business with institutions or banks or mortgage companies or hard money lenders. And if time permits on your show, Larry, I'll share right now today what is the differences between hard money and private money. But a private money is a private lender, an individual, just like you, just like me, just like your viewers and listeners, that lend money from their investment capital or their retirement accounts.
Right.
That's another big one. I never even heard of self-directed IRAs, which someone would need to know how that works. I've got 47 private lenders right now.
Wow.
Just funding our deals.
Right.
Because we do a lot of rehabs. Now, bear in mind, you need private money when a for sale by owner won't sell to you creatively,
right?
i.e. subject to lease options. So use the private money for that. But it's doing business with an individual or individuals.
Right. Multiple individuals, apparently.
Yes. So we don't. So it's not we don't do private placements.
Right.
We don't do money pools.
Yeah. Explain that.
Yeah. So different ways of doing private money. So you could hire an SEC attorney and have a private placement, deal put together. And so people invest into that pool or into that private placement. And depending on the amount of ownership that they have, then it's not like getting a percentage rate of return. It could be. It could be a percentage rate of return, or it could be a percentage of the profits. But the only security that the private lender has in doing that is a piece of paper, like a stock.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So the way we do the business is every deal stands on its own, which means every private lender or individual gets most people call it a mortgage, as here in North Carolina and New Jersey and a few other states, it's a deed of trust. But it's the instrument that protects the private lender in case of default. So I don't borrow any unsecured private money. All the private money I borrow, and what I teach my students to do is to protect their private lenders, with giving them the mortgage. So the three main categories on where you find these people are A, your warm market, people that you've got a relationship with, people in your cell phone, your email, all that stuff, your social groups, church, Rotary Club, blah, 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 blah. Number two is what I teach are I say go where the money is. Like, a lot of times people say, I don't know anybody with money. Everybody I know is broke,
Right,
right?
right,
So the second category is, well, go to where the money is. Get involved in the community.
right,
Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, social networks, etc.
right.
The third category are existing private lenders that are individuals. You say, well, how in the world do you find them? Well, I started out the hard way on looking for existing private lenders. Now, I'm not talking about my warm market. I mean, I put the word out quickly.
Right.
And what I did is I recorded this 16-minute audio called Stress Free Investing. And I handed those CDs out like they were popcorn. Yeah. And I let the tools do the work. But on existing private lenders, I hired my real estate attorney's paralegal to search local public records, looking for individuals that had loaned money out secured by real estate. That was not the right way to do it.
Right.
I'm in a small area. I mean, I do two to three transactions a month. Average profit now is $64,000 per deal, per house. Okay, 2 to 3 a month, and funding with the private money. But I mean, it's such a small market. My total target market is only 40,000 people.
Yeah, that's small.
Very small, and of course that's by choice. I mean, we like in the mastermind we're in, we got a number of real estate investors that invest in multiple cities simultaneously. So I hired the paralegal to search, and very, very few existing private lenders. Like, it took 90 days to find one, all right, in our local area. So that's when, about 7 years ago, 7.5 years ago, I hired a team of software developers to create my private lender data feed. And so every month, by sophisticated software, it skims all the public records nationwide and gets from public records individuals' names that are loaning money out. And so we have their contact information. And so that's the easy way, to locate them.
Right.
If you want to do business with the existing private lenders.
Yeah, that's true. I've heard pros and cons about working with existing private lenders, in the sense that existing private lenders, they already know too much about the business and they want to charge way too much, where you're better off finding friends, family, social connections, that sort of thing, that maybe they're pulling their money out of the stock market or out of a money market, because they're getting 1% return, and then you can get lower. Will you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. So in the warm market, when you're doing business with people that you have some type of relationship with, then you write the program. It's your program. It's your private lending program. It's not a negotiation process. It's, here's the program, are you interested kind of thing. Which, by the way, I don't say, are you interested? Do you know, Larry, I've yet today asked anybody for money.
I love that. Tell them about this. This is good stuff.
I have not asked anybody for money. All I do is I make the program known. Here's my program. All right. I'm paying, right now I'm paying 8%. Okay. And that's the average private money rate across the nation. Not hard money. Hard money is 14% on average, with 4 points and 2% extension fee. Average per year is 20% hard money. I'm at 8%. So I put the word out. So how do you put the word out? Well, you can do private lender luncheons. You can, convert my CD or record your own CD and convert it to an MP3, email it out, text it out. The purpose of that recording is not to sell your private lending program.
Right.
The purpose of that audio is to just give people an overview of what private money is, and to get their greed glands swelled up in their neck, which then leads to what I call the one-on-one.
Right.
All right. We go over the program. So here's one way. I have multiple ways. So we're going to share at least one way right now here on your show. One way that I do not ask for money is, I'll be speaking with someone, and it may be at a social gathering, or they may be responding to the 16-minute CD, and I'll say something along these lines. So let's say you're my friend, Larry, which you are, but let's say we're in another setting, We know each other at a social group or whatever. We're talking along, and I say, Larry, I'm investing in real estate these days. I'm still taking advantage of the tidal wave of foreclosures that are coming along. And I've got a program that some of your friends might be interested in. What I'm doing, Larry, now is I'm paying really, really high rates of return to people that I've got, that I know and trust, some kind of relationship. And Larry, I know you know a lot of people. You're like plugged in, you're involved in, everything that's going on in the community. So Larry, I just want to ask you to spread the word. When you hear someone that's talking about they're not happy with their rates of return, or don't know what the stock market's going to do, or their low CDs that are averaging less than 1%, would you mind referring them to me, and I can explain my program to them and how they can get high rates of return, safely and securely?
That's really good. That's really good.
I didn't ask for money.
No, you didn't.
I asked you to help spread the word.
But what's their response?
Well, I'll tell you the response from my very first private lender and from many others since then. So Wayne was my second private lender. And so I went up to Wayne before Wednesday night Bible study. And I said to Wayne, Wayne, I got something I want to talk to you about confidentially. I said, have you got a few minutes after Bible study tonight that I can visit with you for a moment? He said, sure. So when the closing prayer comes along at the end of Bible study, I look over there and Wayne's on the other side of the auditorium. Well, Wayne's making a beeline out of his pew, coming around the back side of the building, because he wants to know what this confidential thing is. Right. So we go off into a classroom, and I say to Wayne what I just said to you, in essence.
Right.
And he looked at me, he says, well, Jay, what kind of rates have you got in mind? And I said, well, it depends on the deal, et cetera, but what sounds high to you? Now, bear in mind, this was 9 years ago.
Right.
And he says, well, we're getting about 3% or so in our 12-month certificate of deposit. He says, so I guess, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6% sounds high. Sounds good. And I said, well, Wayne, are you saying that you're interested? And he says, well, absolutely, I'm interested. The stock market's volatile, and, we're getting older and we don't have time for a correction, and 3% sure isn't doing it for us. He says, yes, 6% sounds good to me. I said, well, Wayne, I can't pay you 6%. But I can't. My iPhone just told me what 6% was. Sorry about that. Anyway, I said, I can't pay you 6%, Wayne, but I can pay you 8%. And we had a little bit more conversation, and by the next 5 or 10 minutes, he looked at me, he says, put me down for $250,000. So, again, I didn't ask him for money. I asked him to spread the word. And obviously, when someone learns what the program is, if they got money, they're going to ask, you know. But I'm not going to shove. I'm not going to shove that information on them. And I tell you, Larry, recently I raised. You can have that one-on-one conversation, but I've learned I can pretty much explain my program in the same length of time to a group as I can an individual.
Right.
So not long ago, I had a private lender luncheon and got $969,000.
Wow.
Just in that 90 minutes, So again, when do you want to use the private money? When you want to control the house and own the property, and the seller requires all cash. So obviously anything in MLS, anything that's in MLS, REO, bank owned, auctions, you got to have all the money, right? And if you want to own it and it's a pretty house and you don't want to do the lease option, you need the private money. Obviously, if you're going to do any rehabs, I'm not going to rehab a house and unless I own it. Unless I own it or my company owns it.
Right.
But I'm not going to control a house lease option or that kind of thing and put any money in it unless I actually have, ownership of it.
Sure. You wouldn't want to.
Ask me how I know.
No, right? You don't want to rehab somebody else's house.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, this was years ago. I controlled this house on lease option. She didn't want to sell it subject to. And because she had good credit. She had
Right.
good credit. And so I controlled the house lease option. And Larry, my land's one of the dumbest mistakes I've ever made. Thank goodness it worked out okay. But I put like 15,000 or whatever money in that house. And then I found a buyer, and we did a closing with me never owning the house. I got the spread on
Right.
the settlement
Right.
statement. But that was stupid. I mean, don't put money in a house that you don't own. Thank goodness that worked out okay. But a mentor of mine said, "You did what?" So, thank goodness that seminar didn't cost a lot of money.
That's true. Some of the best experience you'll have, or some of the best seminars, is your experience, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
That's true. Now, you mentioned you recently did a luncheon.
Yes.
How did you fill that room with people?
Yeah. Yeah. So good question. So there's two ways you can. Now, this was all warm market.
Right.
This was people I had a relationship with, or people that they knew had a relationship with.
Right.
And so when I'm doing a private lender luncheon, I want to make up a list of 50 names is what I want to do.
Right.
Okay. And I've tried it both ways, Larry. I've had a virtual assistant call and get invitations to the luncheon. Now,
Right.
what we say to them on the telephone is very important. I'm putting on a luncheon. I don't say private lender.
Right.
Okay. They don't even know what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm putting on a luncheon, and I've got a program that I'm now offering, and I would like for you to come and support me. Important words. I'd like you to come and support me. I'm buying lunch. I'm buying lunch for you. I'll be doing a presentation at the lunch. I promise to have you out within an hour and 15 minutes, because they don't get to order food. It's preset food,
Right,
preset
right.
menu, right? By the way, this is not at Denny's, okay? You want to have this at the nicest place that your budget will allow.
Yeah. The
And
Golden
I'd like to
Corral.
Yeah, Golden Corral. There you go.
They even have a meeting room off to the side.
Exactly. So ask them to come and support me, and I'm presenting a new program that I'd like to get their feedback on, and that's it.
Right.
And we start making the phone calls 2 weeks in advance, and so my goal is to get 20 yeses. That's just the way I do it. I want 20 yeses, and then I have my team there. Now, some of your viewers and listeners may not have done their first deal yet.
Right.
So you may not have a team, right?
Right.
But whoever you've done business with, like if you've already got a private lender, definitely have a private lender there that can give credibility if you've already got that relationship in place. Your real estate attorney, who does your taxes?
Right.
Who's the realtor you work with, so they can see at the presentation, this is the real deal, right? And then I give the presentation. And then at the end of the luncheon, we hand out a little form that asks them to, are there any names of people they know? Do they have any interest, etc. And from that private lender luncheon alone, of that $969,000, one lender was $500,000. So
Wow. That's huge. And you do all that by not asking for the money.
that's it. That's it. Because, what I learned from other people, and just what I knew by instinct of dealing with people, when you chase money and when you beg for money, it eludes you, But when you are in the position of, if you don't want to do private money with me, that's okay. There's money all around us. And so, here's an example of not chasing and begging, all right? So I teach and I practice the money comes first. In other words, focus on having the money pledged from your private lender or private lenders,
Right.
and then go negotiate the deal. Now, I've got some friends, and you've got some friends that say, "Oh, go get the house under contract. The money will show up." And I'm sorry, I don't want to put a house under contract unless I know what my end strategy is, or really how I'm going to control that thing. So when I've got the money lined up and they're ready to go, when I go get a house under contract, Larry, I don't call up my private lender and tell them about the deal and ask them, do you want to do the deal? I know they want to do the deal.
Right.
They already signed on to the program, verbally. I'm not going to bring them a deal that doesn't match the criteria.
They're waiting.
So they're waiting, And so we call them up. And on the very first one, there's only 4 things we tell them, and they don't even want to know that much. Good news, we got a deal, and here's the after repaired value, here's where it's located, here's the amount needed to fund it, and here's the closing date. Now, after we've done a deal or two, they don't even want to know that. They just say, how much money, and when do you want it sent to the real estate attorney? That's it.
Wow. Now, I think you said something really, really important there. The 4 things you told them, none of it had to do with ARV appraisal, the amount of repairs, how long it's going to be on the market, all that stuff, what you're paying for it. None of that had anything to do with that, right?
Correct. They could care less how much you paid for it.
Wow.
They want to know, because they already know the rate of return.
Right.
So all they really want to know is, okay, how much do you need and when do you want it there for closing?
Yeah.
And so I practice and I also teach, make it super easy for your private lenders to do business with you.
Right.
The only thing I want, about half of our funding are from private lenders that have accounts at a self-directed IRA. Okay.
Right.
So, the self-directed IRAs, there's the direction of investment, and that type, they don't want to be bothered with all that. So we fill out the documents for them. They do it by DocuSign. And I want them to just be totally as passive as possible. All they got to do is sign a document, wire money, or send a document, wire money, and get checks.
There you go. That's it.
Make it easy for them.
And you're paying them 8%. Now, do you pay them monthly payments, or they just get paid at the end of the deal?
Good question. So in the warm market, that's where a lot of it is, I really leave it up to them, but I do tell them here's what happens most of the time. When the money is coming from the self-directed IRA account from them,
right.
I tell them we typically pay quarterly, semi-annual, or annual. And I say, I got private lenders doing annual, semi-annual. The money's not going back to them; it's going to the account, and I let them pick because I know I'm going to have that house cash flowing most of the time within 90 days anyway, right? But that's for the retirement accounts. But now, listen to this closely for your viewers and listeners. This is one of my favorite reasons for using private money. One reason is I'm not limited to the number of deals I can do. When I was borrowing from the banks and mortgage companies, I could only do, so many deals. I can do unlimited deals now.
Right.
But beyond that, I never take any of my own money to the closing when I buy. We get multiple checks on every deal because I always borrow more than I need to buy, whether I'm on rehab or not. So there's always marketing costs, carrying costs, etc.
Right.
So then, of course, we get another check when we sell, right? And I may get a third check in the middle of the deal if I'm selling it on rent to own. But back to my point. So let's say, and I've got a number of these. Let's say I've got a number of private lenders that want the income. They're not using retirement money.
Right.
They're using their own liquid investment capital.
Right.
And they want monthly income. That's fine because watch this. When I borrow, which is always, when I borrow more money than I need to buy the house, and I'm going to pay them monthly payments, whose money am I using to cash flow their monthly payments right after I purchase? Their money.
Right.
I mean, it's not uncommon for, me to get a $20,000 or $30,000 check at closing when I buy. One of my favorite phrases, Larry, on the check stub from my real estate attorney's office is excess cash to close. I love me some excess cash. But anyway, of course, I'm not going to walk away with $20,000 or $30,000 at closing unless I've got some rehab going on, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't want to pay interest on that money unless I'm really need to use it. But initially, I'll be using the private lender's money to make those first few monthly payments. But of course, that money's going to run out. I want to get that house cash flowing on rent to own, or I want to get it cashed out, in the MLS if I'm selling it that way. And by the way, when it comes to selling houses, I'm now doing simultaneous marketing to locate sellers. I've got an agreement with my realtor. I put it in MLS, all right? I simultaneously market it through my own marketing, like on Facebook ads and, to my buyers list and all that. And I just let the market speak as to which way, what exit strategy we use. But I still compensate my realtor if we find the buyer, because my realtor gives me all these comps and after repaired values for free. It's all about relationship.
Right. That's awesome. That's really good. Will you kind of run down a little bit of some of the terms? I know 8% is what you're typically paying, but you've got to have different terms, whether it's a fix and flip deal or you're going to do a rent to own, lease option, that sort of thing. Give us a little bit of rundown, because there's short-term money and then there's long-term money.
Right. So the program we put together is, and it's regardless of whether it's going to cash out MLS or it's going to be rent to own. So if the private lender is lending us money from their investment capital, just liquid funds, then the term is 2 years. 2 years. And if they're lending money from their retirement account, then it's 5 years, because again, it's not going back in, it's going into the retirement account and not back to them. And what I've discovered over these years, Larry, is even if I haven't cashed it out for whatever reason, in 2 years I've done a rent to own thing,
right? And
for whatever reason it hasn't cashed out, the private lender doesn't want the money back. The private lender wants you to keep the money in play, okay? But of course, we'll be selling houses, on flips or whatever from 6 months from the time we bought them and after we rehabbed them. And a lot of times when the private lenders do, they'll say, hey, can't you just keep the money and don't send the money back? Well, I can't keep the money because the real estate attorney has got to have it assigned to a property. Right. So we cash them out and then we put their money back to work just as soon as possible.
Right. That's good. But the good news is they're wanting you to keep their money and keep it working for them. I know we've as a hard money lender over the years, we've done hard money lending and continue to do some of that. And as a hard money lender, back when we used to broker other people's money, they would have a payoff and we would try to have another loan lined up to where they get the money through the attorney, but the attorney just keeps it and puts it in another deal. Right.
And that works if there's another deal to go.
If there's another deal lined up, lined up. So on your longer, like if you're going to do lease options or rent to own, whatever, and I'm assuming your rent to own is kind of a lease option, they eventually got to get a loan and pay you off.
Yeah, same thing.
Is 5 years the most you're doing? Are you doing interest only payments for 5 years, or you doing amortization, or what?
Yeah, we're doing interest only on all the deals for two reasons. It's a win for the private lender, and it's a win for us, the real estate investor, the borrower. And here's how. If I'm paying principal and interest, then of course that is paying the principal down for the lender, and they're not making as much money.
Right.
They make more money. They keep all their principal in play. And of course, from our standpoint, interest-only payments are less on cash flow than principal and interest. Now, I'm not saying there's not a time and a place for paying principal and interest.
Right.
For example, in some areas of North Carolina, you can buy a house, for $30,000, right? And what I've discovered, the amount of rents across the board are not exactly perfectly correlated with how much you pay for a house and how much rent you can get.
Right.
So if you could pay to a private lender on a 7 year or 8 year term and have at least your property break even and pay principal and interest,
right?
Well, now you got a free and clear house,
right.
And you haven't killed the golden goose, so to speak.
Right. But I see your point. It works. there's two different ways to go with it. Interest only, you're going to have more cash flow, but you eventually got to pay off that full loan.
Absolutely.
By either selling the property or whatever. Or I'm sure at this point, as long as you've been doing this, I'm sure a lot of your people, if the rent to own buyer or lease option buyer, if they don't exercise, you just tell your private money lender, or they probably ask you, can I just renew this? Can I just keep it going?
And what you just said triggered a really, really important point that I want to bring out. And that is, unless you as the real estate investor have got a program in place to where you assist, or you've got a credit repair company to assist that rent-to-own buyer in getting ready for a mortgage, you don't want to be borrowing private money and selling on rent-to-own, okay? Because that would be, or you going, because here's the deal, and of course you know this, Larry, better than anybody. You sell on rent-to-own, if you don't help that family or that buyer, that lease purchase buyer, if you don't help them in the credit repair process, the odds are very, very unlikely that they're ever going to get, ready for a mortgage. So actually in our lease option agreement, we require them to enter the credit repair program. And so the credit repair program company we use actually has a VIP service. I use the option money to cash flow paying for the credit repair. And I've got an 80% success rate now. 80% of our rent-to-own buyers get ready for a mortgage within a year or so, sometimes 6 to 9 months.
That is awesome.
And we don't have to rely on them receiving the responses from the disputes from the repositories, the credit bureaus, for them to send those responses back in. It's all done online by the credit repair company that we use. So let me put a bow on that as to what I'm trying to say. On selling on rent to own, just know as the real estate entrepreneur, if you want to move to cash out, you may not want to move to cash out. I mean, somebody could be doing a sandwich lease purchase, lease purchase over here, a pretty house that doesn't need rehab, lease purchase over there to somebody else. And, you got the profits in the middle and et cetera. Right. But if you want them to cash out, you got to be with a credit repair company that knows what they're doing.
I agree with that. It's been my experience, but I do a lot of those 30,000 type houses, right? But it's my experience that 99.9999% of them never cash you out.
That's right. That's right. Without having that in place. And, you as the real estate entrepreneur may not be interested in cashing out.
It doesn't matter to me. I want to see them be a homeowner. I would love for them to be a homeowner. But you and I both know, Jay, especially on the lower priced homes, the vast majority of them never cash out. That's why I call them homeowners in training, right? They never pass.
I had never heard you say that, Larry, on my lands.
Yeah, that's what I call them, homeowners in training. And actually, a lot of people think, even if I sell one of those houses with a lease option person in it, or as you call it, a rent-to-own person, if you sell a house with that in it, they're like, well, what if they default? What if they default? Quite frankly, that's the best thing that can happen because you get another down payment or another option consideration, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
What's a typical one of your deals look like? And then I know you got a gift for everybody.
Yeah. So right here in Morehead City in this market, our median price of a single family house is $225,000. So we're higher here because we're, some areas of North Carolina.
Right.
And so that's the medium. So for someone to own a home or buy a home that's nice, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,400 square feet, that's going to be $155,000.
Right.
And so we try to keep our investment between $150 and $250.
Right.
But I'm not sure I answered your question.
Well, yeah, I think you did. I was just looking kind of for the price range of what types of properties you're buying and selling and that sort of thing.
That's right. Yeah.
That's good. Now, I understand you got a free gift for everybody.
I do have a free gift, Larry.
And we created a
here's the
special
gift.
page for it.
Yep. So what I have is I've got a free master class, free online class that's called, and it's on demand, and the title of the class is called Where to Get the Money Now, regardless of your credit, regardless of your income, and regardless of your experience in real estate investing. And so Larry, we've got a special website or URL put together for your viewers and listeners, and that's www.larrygoins.com/JAY. And so your viewers and listeners can go to that link. I'm sure you'll have that link in the show notes as well.
Right, we will.
And go there. And so on that masterclass, I will explain the 5 steps of getting the money in your warm market and the 5 steps of how you can also get the money from existing private lenders. So, any of your viewers and listeners that are interested in getting private money lined up and pledged, if they're, whenever they're going to be buying a house that the seller requires all the money, then they definitely want to attend this master class.
That's awesome. Guys, go to larrygoins.com/JAY, and you'll be able to get access to your free on-demand masterclass. Right, Jay?
You got it, Larry. Man, I've loved being on here with you. It's been fun.
It's been a lot of fun. It really has. I really do appreciate it. And guys, be sure and grab that free training as well. And Jay, thanks a lot, man. I'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you, Larry. See you soon.
Thanks.